Hey everyone, we are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
I was staying at a hotel downtown, and I ended up extending it day after day after day. Stop everything you are doing right now, because what you just watched is not a soundbite. That is not a media appearance. That is not a PR moment carefully crafted by an agent or a publicist. That is a big brother sitting across from a camera, reaching back into one of the most painful experiences of his life and telling you exactly what it felt like to watch the NFL systematically disrespect his little brother in front of the entire world for 3 days straight. I'm Dre Fiver from Dre Reports, and today we are going all the way in on the most emotionally loaded, most factually damning, most spiritually grounded conversation that has come out of the Shedeur Sanders draft saga since that fifth-round pick was finally announced. Because Deion Sanders Jr. just opened up in a way that no one inside the Sanders family has opened up before. And when you combine what he said with Jarvis Landry and Leonard Fournette both going on record to defend Shedeur's confidence and his character, and when you put all of that on top of what we already know about how this young man has been treated since the moment he set foot in Cleveland, you get a story that is not just about football. You get a story about faith, about resilience, about a plan that was bigger than any draft board, and about a brotherhood that turned pain into rocket fuel. Let's start at the beginning, because you need to understand the full weight of what Deion Jr. described before we start analyzing any of it. He was not watching the draft from a couch at home. He was not at a party. He booked a hotel near the family so he could be present, so he could be there for his brother during what was supposed to be one of the greatest celebrations of Shedeur's life. He thought he was paying for one night. Maybe two. He ended up extending that hotel reservation day after day after day as the rounds kept moving and Shedeur's name kept not being called. Think about what that hotel room looked like on day 2. On day 3, the silence between notifications. The texts he wanted to send but held back because he didn't know what to say. He told the interviewer from Flexi, a channel with deep Sanders family access that has been doing outstanding work covering this story, that he wanted to reach out to Shedeur but held back because he genuinely did not know what his brother was going through emotionally in that moment. That is a level of helplessness that any sibling who has ever watched someone they love get hurt and been unable to fix it will understand immediately. And Deion Jr. sat in that hotel room and felt every single round of that draft like a physical blow. Not to his career, not to his brand, to his heart. Because it was his brother, and brothers feel things differently than agents, differently than coaches, differently than analysts on television who spent 3 days explaining to you why it all made sense. Now here's the part of Deion Jr.'s interview that I need you to sit with, because this is where the conversation moves from emotional to theological, and I say that with complete sincerity and zero sarcasm. After describing the pain of watching round after round pass, after describing the helplessness of that hotel room, Deion Jr. arrived at a conclusion that is more sophisticated than anything any NFL analyst said about this situation during or after the draft. He said it was supposed to happen, and then he went to the Bible. He referenced the story of Moses and Pharaoh, specifically the passage where God hardened Pharaoh's heart so that the works of God could be shown through what followed. He applied that framework directly to what happened to Shedeur. The people who had the power to draft him earlier, the people who passed on him round after round, their hearts may have been hardened specifically so that the glory of what comes next would be undeniable. Now, whether you are a person of faith or not, I want you to hear the strategic intelligence inside that framework, because what Deion Jr. is saying is that the disrespect was not the end of the story. The disrespect was the setup for the story. And the proof that he's right is sitting right in front of us right now, because everything that was supposed to diminish Shedeur Sanders has instead multiplied his platform by a factor of 100. And that brings me to the prank call moment, because Deion Jr. addressed it directly, and his framing of it is the single most accurate thing anyone has said about that entire incident. He said the plan backfired. Whatever was supposed to happen, whoever was supposed to be embarrassed, whatever narrative was supposed to be written about a quarterback who couldn't handle pressure or couldn't hold his composure, it backfired completely. Because instead of shrinking Shedeur, it expanded him. Instead of turning people against him, it converted people who were either neutral or openly hostile into active supporters. Deion Jr. said he watched people who had pure hatred for the Sanders family go through round after round of the draft and slowly transform. People who had been on the other side of this conversation were suddenly saying out loud that something was wrong, that the treatment didn't fit the crime, that whatever you thought about Shedeur's first-round value, a fifth-round selection after a prank call during the draft weekend, was something different, something that required an explanation that nobody credible was actually providing. And that shift, that conversion of hostility into curiosity and curiosity into support, that is what Deion Jr. meant when he said it's 100-fold now. The attempt to minimize Shedeur Sanders instead created the largest support coalition any fifth-round quarterback has ever had walking into a training camp in the history of the National Football League. Now let me bring in the Jarvis Landry and Leonard Fournette dimension of this story, because these are not family members. These are not people with a biological obligation to defend Shedeur Sanders. These are professional football players with reputations to protect, and both of them went on record to say things that the Watson apologist crowd and the Shedeur skeptic crowd are going to have a very hard time dismissing. Jarvis Landry, a veteran wide receiver who has spent his entire career around elite quarterbacks and knows exactly what a franchise player looks and acts like, was asked a direct question about Shedeur's confidence, and his answer was not diplomatic. He did not say Shedeur is working hard and we'll see what happens. He said, as reported in coverage of his public comments, that Shedeur is a confident player. And then he added the line that I think is the most important thing any veteran has said about Shedeur Sanders since the draft. He said that confidence is what makes him him, and he would be damned if Shedeur stops being him. Read that again. A veteran player, a guy who does not need to co-sign anyone, publicly declared that Shedeur's confidence is not a problem to be fixed. It is the feature, it is the attribute that got him to this point. And the suggestion that he should be less of himself to make the people who passed on him 5 rounds early more comfortable is something Jarvis Landry is not willing to entertain. Leonard Fournette went even further in terms of what his endorsement of Shedeur actually reveals about the character evaluation that happened during the draft process. Fournette said, and I want to be precise about this because the language matters, that Shedeur never had a fair shot. He described the questions reporters were asking during the pre-draft process as attempts to get Shedeur to go at coaches, to say something inflammatory about Stefanski, to create a controversy that could then be used to justify passing on him. And he said Shedeur never took the bait. He was media prepped, he was composed, he did exactly what a quarterback one should do when he arrives at a new organization. Fournette then asked the question that nobody in the national media has had the courage to ask directly. Should Shedeur Sanders have been a 5th-round pick? His answer was no. Hell no, was the exact characterization of his sentiment. And that assessment from a veteran running back who understands what NFL-caliber talent looks like carries weight that no draft analyst's retroactive explanation can counteract. These are not fans. These are not content creators with a Shedeur agenda. These are football players who have seen this before and are telling you what they see. Here is my full Dre Fiver read on the confidence conversation, because I think this is actually the most important storyline inside all of these interviews, and it is the one that the skeptics keep trying to use as a weapon against Shedeur. The confidence narrative. The idea that Shedeur is too confident, too assured of himself, too much of a brand before he has earned the right to be a brand. And I want to dismantle that argument completely right now because it doesn't survive contact with what actually happened. Shedeur Sanders was projected as a 1st-round quarterback by multiple respected draft analysts. He was not a hype creation. He was a statistically elite college quarterback who led Colorado to relevance, who drew national audiences to late-night games, who put up numbers against real competition, and did it in an offense that was not designed to manufacture quarterback stats. His confidence was not a personality defect. It was an accurate self-assessment. The disconnect was not between his confidence and his talent. The disconnect was between his talent and the way certain organizations with certain agendas evaluated it. And when Jarvis Landry tells you that confidence is what makes Shedeur him, and it should never be coached out of him, he is not just defending a person. He is defending the right of a black quarterback in the National Football League to believe in himself without that belief being rebranded as arrogance and used against him. Now let me give you the detail from Deion Jr.'s interview that I think is criminally underreported in the coverage of this conversation, because it goes directly to the question of who Shedeur Sanders actually is when the cameras are off and the media performance is not required. Deion Jr. told a story about a day the two of them went to a fair in Dallas. It was a casual day, brothers hanging out. The kind of day that does not become content and does not get posted. And somehow, the conversation turned to real estate. And Shedeur's response to the real estate conversation was immediate and unambiguous. I don't care about that right now. I care about football. That is the response of a person who is not running a brand exercise. That is the response of someone who is genuinely, authentically, obsessively committed to the craft. Real estate is how athletes hedge their bets. Real estate is how players who are not sure whether the football thing is going to work out protect their futures. Shedeur Sanders was not interested in that conversation because in his mind, the football thing is absolutely going to work out, and there is no hedge required. That level of singular focus That refusal to split your attention between your craft and your exit strategy is exactly the kind of mentality that separates quarterbacks who become franchise players from quarterbacks who have long careers as backups. And it came from a family barbecue story, not a press conference. That is the most authentic endorsement of Shedeur's mindset that has come out of any interview this entire offseason. Let me now connect all of these threads because I think when you lay them out in order, the picture they create is overwhelming. You have Deion Jr. confirming that the draft fall was painful, unexpected, and extended in a way that nobody in the Sanders family anticipated. You have him arriving at the theological conclusion that the hardship was intentional in a cosmic sense, designed to multiply the platform rather than diminish it, and that the evidence for that conclusion is the hundredfold expansion of Shedeur's support base that occurred as a direct result of the disrespect. You have him pointing to the prank call as the moment the entire plan backfired on whoever designed it, because it converted enemies into witnesses. You have Jarvis Landry, a veteran receiver with no obligation to weigh in, going on record to say Shedeur's confidence is the feature, not the bug, and that it should never be coached out of him. You have Leonard Fournette, another veteran with real NFL credibility, saying flatly that Shedeur never had a fair shot, that the pre-draft process was rigged against him, and that a fifth-round selection for this quarterback was an embarrassment. And you have a real estate conversation from a Dallas fair that tells you more about who Shedeur Sanders really is than any combine measurement or quarterback rating ever could. That is not a collection of supportive quotes. That is a comprehensive character portrait painted by people with no agenda other than the truth. And here's what I want you to sit with as we close this out. The narrative that was supposed to be written about Shedeur Sanders after that draft was supposed to be a cautionary tale: overconfident quarterback, overhyped product, family connection that bought him a platform he didn't earn, draft fall that confirmed what the scouts always knew. That was the story. And every round that passed in that draft was supposed to add another chapter to that cautionary tale. But something happened that the people writing that narrative did not account for. The people watching the draft started doing math in real time. They started looking at the gap between what the analysts had said Shedeur was worth and where he actually landed, and the math did not add up. And the prank call made it worse. And Deion Jr. extending his hotel reservation day after day made it worse. And every veteran player who came forward to say this kid never had a fair shot made it worse. And now the cautionary tale is not about Shedeur Sanders. The cautionary tale is about what happens when an institution tries to write a young man's story for him and he refuses to accept the ending they chose. The works of God are being shown. Deion Jr. said it. And right now, with Shedeur Sanders competing for the starting job in Cleveland, with Todd Monken refusing to coronate Watson, with Quincy Williams confirming both quarterbacks are earning it every day, and with veteran after veteran coming forward to speak his name with respect, it is getting harder and harder to argue that the ending they tried to write is the one we're actually going to get. Drop a comment right now and tell me this. After hearing Deion Jr., Jarvis Landry, and Leonard Fournette all speak on Shedeur Sanders in the same week, do you believe the NFL draft fall was orchestrated? Because I want to see where this community stands. Smash that like button. Share this video with every football fan you know who is still sleeping on this story. And subscribe to Dre Reports right now, because we are the only channel covering Shedeur Sanders with zero filter, zero agenda, and zero interest in the narrative that the people who passed on him 5 rounds too late are still trying to sell you. Dre Fiverr. Dre Reports. We out.